Hello, welcome to hands-on-sap.com. This is Hassan Mir. In this tutorial, I'll try to explain you the documentation that is created during an SAP project. Okay, so again, this is not a very comprehensive list of steps. This is a basic path that any methodology would take. Okay, so any method you take or any roadmap you take to implement an SAP project, it has to pass through these broad steps. It could be a little more steps in some methodology, but here the idea is to explain you what happens broadly in an implementation project. Okay, so in the last tutorial we discussed the implementation process. First, a functional consultant would try to understand the business requirement of the client, then SAP system would be configured accordingly, then you would test the systems and end users would test the system, then you will train end users, and then the go live would take place where you will put the system in production. Now in the stage where you're trying to understand business requirements, you would create, a functional consultant would create a business requirements document. In this document you would list all the requirements that client has, that client expects from an ERP system. Okay, so each methodology would give a fancy name to this document, but bottom line is that business requirement document has to be created that will get a sign off from the client, because this will become the scope of your project. Once the requirements have been found out, then all you need to do is configure the SAP system in such a way that it starts meeting these requirements. For example, requirement could be a check printing has to be done in such a way that electronic signatures are printed off on the checks, or one of the requirement is that the client should be able to add different payment terms for each vendor or supplier. So these are just basic examples. Okay, now this will be a huge list of the requirements that should be matched by the SAP system. So this is going to be the first document coming out of the first stage. Then another document that comes out of this first stage of understanding business requirement is called business process mapping. All you do in this document is you try to map the requirement that you have already found out to an SAP process. Okay, so you have to explain that, okay, these are the requirements of the client. Would they be met by the SAP system or not? Okay, for example, you can say, okay, this requirement 1 would be fulfilled by an SAP feature. By this SAP feature, requirement 2 would also be fulfilled by the same SAP feature, and requirement 3 would be fulfilled by some other SAP feature. This could be a report, this could be a form, this could be a program, or simply this could be a functionality, or or any feature in SAP that would fulfill this requirement. There could be few requirements that will not be fulfilled by the SAP system. They could be very unique requirements, and simply those requirements are called gaps, which are not fulfilled by the SAP system or any other ERP system. Okay, now gaps, how are they treated? Either you will try to find a workaround for the gaps. Like workarounds are functionality in SAP that is mainly intended for some other purpose, but maybe you can use that to fill your gaps, or not maybe completely, but to some extent. Or you can write extensions or your own custom made applications to fill those gaps, or you can purchase some third-party applications. Okay, so the concept is called extension. You write your own application, you're extending the software. Now, or you can do the recoding of SAP, which is not really supported by the SAP, but you have to really be very cautious if you want to go through this step. So these are the different options to fill the gaps. So that's what the business process mapping document is. It gives you a picture, like after configuration of SAP, all these requirements would be mapped except for these requirements, which would be gaps. Now from stage 2, when you configure the system, a very important document comes out from functional consultants. It's called configuration document. What this document is, basically, it shows you how to configure the system. So you should be able to follow all these steps and you should be able to configure a brand new system back to the same state. So that's what configuration document is. So when consultants leave, some other support person comes in, that person should be able to see configuration document just in case if new system needs to be reconfigured from scratch. So this is a very important document. It does not make sense that you just configure the system and you run away without leaving any document of how to reconfigure the system. For a new person, it will be a very difficult job to reverse engineer the document by looking at the configurations. Okay, so that's going to be a very bad practice. You need to leave a configuration document. Now, any methodology that you follow for an ERP implementation would have a step of creating a configuration document. Before you actually configure the system, you will have to create a configuration document. So based on that, you can configure the system. Now, once you have configured the system, you need to test the system. Before you test the system, a functional consultant would create a test script. Okay, or maybe a testing department could create that as well, but functional consultant definitely needs to be involved in that. Test scripts are not really technical or programming script or anything like that. They're simply steps in a human language where you go to that screen and enter this data, and this should be the output, and this should be the input, and what is the expected output. If the output is not what you're seeing is not really the right output, then how do you know it's not the right output, etc., etc. Okay, so test scripts is basically again list of steps that you follow to do the testing, and also it tells you how to see if your output of reports and the forms is up to the expectations or not. So once the testing is done, you go to the training stage, and here a business procedure document has to be created. A consultant could create this document, or maybe some temporary staff could create this document as well, but it has to be created. What is a business procedure document? It simply tells the end users what would be the steps they need to follow to complete procedures, business procedure. For example, invoice entry could be one business procedure, journal entry could be another business procedure, posting data could be another business procedure. So what would be the exact steps that you need to follow? So anybody should be able to read these steps and perform the business procedure. So it's called a business procedure document. It's very good practice to create that as well. So you will use the same document for training, and you will use the same document after go live to train end users, and also to help them out in their day-to-day tasks. So this is a summary of the documents. From stage 1, understanding business requirements, 2 documents would come out: business requirements document and business process mapping document. From the configuration stage, configuration document would come out. From the testing stage, you will create a test script, and in the training stage, you're going to create business procedure document. So again, this is not a comprehensive list. Some methodologies could go very fancy and they would have like 10 times more steps, but this is a basic skeleton for any implementation methodology. It has to go through these. It may have more documents, but every methodology would have these basic documents. Okay, so for new learners, this is just to give you an idea of what a implementation project and processes looks like. So these are the basic tasks in an implementation project, and these are the documents that come out of implementation project. Okay, so that's pretty much it for this tutorial, and I see you in my next tutorial.